Thank you, and welcome to the March 6th meeting of the City of Easthampton City Council meeting. Could I have a roll call, please?
Justin Cobb.
Present.
Donald Sikowski. Salem Derby. Dan Hagan.
Present.
Joe McCoy.
Here.
Chester Ogilevitz.
Present.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Joy Winnie. Nathan Ziegler.
Here. That said, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion on the table to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Any further debate or amendments to this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections or abstentions?
One abstention, please.
Okay, with that said, what I'd like to do before we get into public speak time is I'd like to introduce the school superintendent Nancy Follansbee to come up and speak to us on an issue which is a little bit further down your agenda. The idea here was to at least allow her to present her case and allow some public comment that we would listen to in public speak if there were people interested in the audience. Nancy, if you don't mind to step forward, identify yourself, just for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Follansbee, Superintendent of Schools, and I'm here this evening to put a statement of interest before you, statement of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for Whitebrook Middle School. I think it was 2 years ago I came before you and submitted another statement of interest. Statement of interest is simply a document that they require if we want one of our schools to be considered as a possible school, for them to come out and do an evaluation on and then determine whether they want to take it into the pipeline as a project for the School Building Authority. So 2 years ago, you approved one, and last year all we had to do was recertify the one that you approved 2 years ago. And this year we had to update the statement of interest before submitting it. And so that's what I've done, and that's what you have as a draft here. And so as you can see on the first page, it just shows all the things I had to check off for the certification. And there's really no money involved in this at all, and that's pretty much what this says, that this does not make any kind of agreement that they will fund anything. And later on, when you look at the vote, it talks about how, in fact, if you flip to the last page, the language for the vote, it says that by submitting, and this is just before documentation of vote, it says, by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. It really is just a data collection mechanism that the School Building Authority uses. So if you look at the second page, as I say, this is a draft. I can't submit it until I have approval of the City Council and approval of the school committee. We already have school committee approval, so I'm here tonight to ask for your approval. The second page shows that the statement of interest is for priority 5, which is replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems, such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy related to a school costs related to a school facility. So that's the request that we would be putting forward to see if they would be interested in taking us in as a possible candidate for a renovation for Whitebrook. I apologize for the print not all coming out in this. I can't download the official form until I've submitted it, and I can't submit it until I get your approval. So I'm sending you, I've given you the draft this evening. And the rest of it is just all of the information that they asked me to provide on our facilities. So again, really it's a data collection mechanism for the School Building Authority, and so I'm here tonight to ask for your approval of the submission of the statement of interest. Barbara has the vote format that we've provided to you. It has to be in a special format, and you know, I'm hoping that I will get your approval. We are in a short timeline because I have to have this submitted by April 10th. So again, just to ask you to keep that in mind. Any questions?
Any questions for Councilor Rist?
Is next meeting okay to have this vote taken, or would you like it tonight?
I would prefer it tonight, but I certainly could submit it after the next meeting.
I'm happy to move, Mr. President, if it's appropriate, to have this vote taken tonight and void our rules, or put aside our rules, unless the councilors want to see it sent to committee. It seems
Any
pretty
objections to
straightforward.
voting on this tonight? Okay, I believe you can. I'm going to vote on it when it comes up in the correspondence.
You don't want to do it now? Okay, fine, sure.
Just in
I'll
case.
make the motion at that time.
Thank
We'll
you.
do it tonight.
I do want to note this, the reason I set this structure up was simply to allow the public who may be interested in this an opportunity to address the council on this, even though we would not engage in dialogue during public speak. This is why the presentation is now, and why you see the data under correspondence. I will note that I feel no need for this to go to committee, simply because it's been before us twice before, I believe, once before, maybe twice before, so I think this is just a housekeeping item to deal with.
Yeah, and you actually can see your vote, because I think that's in the draft on the last page.
Okay.
It was in 2010.
That said, if there are no further questions of the councilors for the superintendent, please take a seat then, and I'll open up the public speak time. If there's any members of the public who would like to step forward to address the council on anything that is not currently in the public hearing part of our agenda, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and we'll kindly listen. I would like to note that our council rules list this, that any member of the public may address the council during this time, but after being recognized by the chair, the person should state his name and address, and then time allowed, each person will be at the discretion of the chair. In general, each person should be allowed approximately 3 minutes. I generally allow more if it's only 1 or 2 people speaking. All remarks during this period should be made to the council as a whole, not to an individual member, and remarks will not usually be followed by any kind of dialogue. After last meeting, you'll see something on the agenda to kind of tighten it up with on our rules. That said, does anyone in the public like to step forward, please do so. Seeing none, we've got a little bit of time. Communications from elected officials. Councilor McCoy?
Thank you very much. So this is a good segue into what our superintendent just discussed. We have, it sounds like people are comfortable with moving tonight to certify this statement concerning the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Councilor Rich, did you want to make the motion, or would you like?
You can make it. Okay.
So again, this is just, reiterating what our superintendent just mentioned, making a statement to be eligible for the School Building Authority to consider our hopeful improvements in the Whitebrook Middle School. So, in form of a motion, I would like to say that having convened in an open meeting law on March 6, 2013, the City Council of the City of Easthampton, in accordance with its charter bylaws and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated February 28, 2013, for the Whitebrook Middle School located at 200 Park Street, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future replacement, renovation, or modernization of the school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems, decrease energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment for the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to recommend basically approval of this statement of interest as mentioned. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you very much. I'll take the next item here as you can see, we've had a resignation on the school committee, and I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude for her service. and for, hope everything is well as she moves forward. But because of this, it has put the school committee or the city of Easthampton in a unique position, given the results of the election, with this vacancy that we have to fill. So after a brief discussion, basically reading the charter, the school committee and the city council are going to be holding a joint meeting. We have 4 excellent candidates to discuss at this meeting. This will be an open meeting. It will be held March 27th at 6 p.m. in these chambers. And the goal is actually to appoint a interim, for lack of a better term, school committee candidate until the next election fills that seat with an official election notice. That said, anybody would like to comment on this? Councilor Riz?
I just wanted to ask if it's the intent, we have 4 applicants it appears, are they going to be interviewed that evening? Do we know how the process would, I would like to personally, but I don't know what.
We did last time.
We did interview last time? I would think that that's important, to be able to interview them and then discuss, if that's appropriate. So I thought maybe, Mr. President, you could contact the chairman of the school board to make sure that we are able
I
to
will
do
make those
that.
arrangements.
Thank you, sir.
Any further comment or discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it back over to Councilor McCoy.
Okay, thank you very much. The next communication we have is from the Board of Assessors and a discussion relating to a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with the Borrego Solar, which is doing the work on the Oliver Street Landfill Solar Facility. So obviously this is based around finance agreements for the city. So on that note, I would like to make a motion to have this request, payment in lieu of taxes for Borrego Solar, moved to finance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to move the request to authorize the mayor entering a pilot agreement with Borrego Solar to finance for review and consideration. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Councilor McCoy's floor.
Thank you. Last communication we have is from our city engineer, who basically he touched on a lot of this last week, last city council meeting, when we were discussing the movement of the telephone poles. But that whole intersection of West Street, Glendale Street, Loudville Street, Pomeroy Meadow Road intersection is going under a major renovation with actually moving of streets and shifting streets anyway, and moving telephone poles. And so in his letter, there is a request for some taking of properties so that that could be done safely and correctly. So this also, again, would be information that would be needed to go through a subcommittee and then ultimately back to city council. So I would like to make a motion to move this request for taking to property.
Second.
Here we have a motion on the table to recommend the taking of property at the Glendale West Loudville Road intersection project be moved to property for consideration and review. Is there any further discussion on this motion? I have one comment to make. Given the nature and sensitive nature of this, I would encourage the property committee, with only one member present tonight, Councilor on the end there, to aggressively set up some meetings in order to get through this, because it does seem sometimes sensitive. That said, any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. At this point, I think we have time for mayor communications.
I think you're right, Mr. President. This will be fairly short. 2 items. One that's on your agenda, that is that I wanted to provide to you a publication that my office received, and we got some extra copies for you from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission regarding the CPA and how it's impacted the valley since its inception. And so I think it's good reading and very supportive of the CPA, as I am. The other, I just want to let the City Council know that that pilot agreement hasn't been vetted by anyone. It hasn't been looked over by administration and hasn't been looked at by the city's attorney. It is, I believe, a document that was provided by the applicant to the Board of Assessors.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That said, I think it's close enough where I'll entertain a motion to enter into our public hearings.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion on the table to enter into public hearings. Any further comment on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? None? Councilor Ziegler, you have the floor.
Well, previously it was brought to the ordinance subcommittee to address the potential changes for keeping of chickens within an industrial zone. And we spent a lot of time looking at how best to address this. A number of residents who live within the industrial zone and the different maps. So we would like to move forward with those changes. And I'd like to move an amendment today, or excuse me, I'd like to amend one of the zoning ordinances and propose the motion.
We can't do it yet.
Okay.
We have to have a public hearing first.
So what I'll do at this point is I do have one question for the clerk later on, but I'll open this section up for the public to step forward if anyone would like to speak to this issue. Please state your name and address for the public. Seeing none, before we begin, does this require a two-thirds vote?
That means
This is
everybody
zoning-
here has to vote
zoning
yes.
ordinance
Right.
amendment, yep,
So if there's a no,
Okay.
it gets defeated.
Right. I
We
leave it
could
up to
continue the vote if you fear that.
Do you wish to continue the vote? Which we would continue the hearing.
Well, I don't think we've had full discussion. I know it did go through ordinance with a 3-0. I think we should actually move forward with it. This has been on for some time now, and again, I would definitely like to have some discussion on it if there are any concerns. But as I said previously, there's been a number of residents who live within an industrial zone and have not been able to keep chickens, and it became a concern with the transfer of property. And again, like I said, at this time, I think we should move forward with that.
Okay, I will note that the planning board has commented on this and has also recommended that we approve this as it's stated tonight. Okay, any further discussion or questions for the councilor? Just, Councilor Hagan.
Just one quick question, Councilor Ziegler. Was there any residents of the industrial that came to your committee and opposed it, or just residents that came that were supportive of it?
I
I mean,
don't
or
believe that we had any residents either way, in support or in opposition. But it was, again, brought to the council's attention sometime many months ago regarding some people who were looking for being able to keep chickens, and they had found that their houses fell within the industrial zones. Right.
And just one broader question: and this may be unfair to you, has there been any problems in the other zones that came to your committee? Or, I mean, I haven't heard any personally. I just didn't know if anything has come forward for keeping of chickens in other zones.
No,
Okay, thank
none
you.
whatsoever.
The only thing I've actually heard is covered in this table is where it says no roosters. I've heard complaints about roosters. So,
Looks like there's
That's it?
a lot of no roosters written down here.
yep.
Right.
Is there any further comment on this? That said, you have the floor to offer a motion.
Okay. I move to amend the Easthampton zoning ordinance, Table 5.1, accessory uses, 7A, 7B, and 7C, to allow the keeping of chickens in accordance with the same guidelines allowed in residential districts within the city, and also to amend Section 10.8 by deleting the reference to residential lots, both in accordance with the documents prepared for this meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to recommend an amendment to Table 5.1, 7A, B, and C, and Sections 10.8 as presented tonight. Any further discussion on this motion? No. Remember, this is a two-thirds vote. Okay, that said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Before we begin with Councilor Hagan, since these are supplementals, these require a two-thirds vote too? Supplementals, no? Councilor Hagan, you have the floor.
If I have no objection from any of the councilors, I'd like to just move the order of the public hearings in and do the public hearing on the $27,000 for the CPA account to design 3 athletic fields in Nonotuck Park first. And just as a little background, because I also sit as part of my...
Is there any objection to him? Okay, no objections. Go ahead, Councilor.
As part of my role as Chair of Finance, I also sit on the CPA committee. So just as a little background, and I know there's some people here that may want to address the issue, earlier this year, actually in the fall, 2 organizations, the Youth Soccer Association and the Little League, both came forward with proposals to the CPA committee looking for funding to improve their fields in Nonotuck Park. And in some of the discussion within the CPA, it started off as we were looking at the 2 projects sort of independently, and then the idea came that maybe that should be one. If we're going to do it, maybe the cost to do both at the same time might be improved by doing one large project, at least looking into one large project. And then it was brought to the CPA's attention by the administration that because under the new recreation portion of the CPA that any recreational funding on city property has to come from the city as opposed to any private organizations that would be using city land. So at that point, the Park and Recs Department under Director Mason brought forward a proposal to study the availability of designing these fields, because we really have no cost of what it might, entail to do all the fields or some of the fields. So what's before you tonight, and I'll let some of the people out here speak, like Mr. Mason or others, on the particulars, but what this is tonight is just a funding of a design to study possibly putting in both baseball and soccer fields. And I'll do a second reading on the motion. Dated January 29th, 2013, request is hereby made for the approval of the following appropriation. The amount requested, $27,000, to be appropriated from CPA open space, and the amount of $27,000 to be appropriated to athletic field improvement expense, $27,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to fund the design of 3 new athletic fields in Nonotuck Park on behalf of the Easthampton Park and Rec Department.
Okay, that said, if there's any member of the public who would like to step forward and address the council on this issue, please do so. State your name and address for the record.
John Mason, Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Easthampton. Councilor Hagan did a nice job describing the proposal and what we're looking for. The design phase is $27,000, and because of the scope of work has changed over the last 5-10 years, this will help us design the original phase that was completed in 2008, and to complete the Little League Section 3 area, and then move the soccer fields and add an additional soccer field, which was part of the original Park and Recreation plans before I came aboard. So this plan will get us in place. It'll get us cost estimates. It'll get us moving in the right direction to do this project complete and right, and understand how much it's going to cost to do it. With the irrigation that's going to be put in for the soccer fields, it's going to help our staffing. We won't be relying on weather to maintain our fields. We'll actually be able to treat our fields and have them be watered, and so it's not such a stress on our staff. Like I said, this is something that the Recreation Commission has been after for years. It'll finish up our original plans, and we hope you support the project. If anybody have any questions?
Any other councilors have a technical question for Mr. Mason? Okay. Councilor Hurst?
I was just wondering if, after design phase is complete, how you would proceed with funding the project. Is there grants out there that we're going to look for, or is this a CPA-funded full project next year or later down the road?
We're looking at
You know what
CPA
the-
fundings to start. We think we have a good ballpark when that was submitted to them early on in this process, but because we're using public dollars, it's hard to, you can't ask a contractor to give a quote and have it be public, and it gives them a competitive disadvantage. So we think going this route will give us a better understanding, but we think we have a general idea, and the CPA has a general idea of where we're going to be at with the cost.
Okay. So
Okay.
you would think it would be a CPA request next year, whenever it's ready to be requested?
Whenever it's ready, yeah. And the leagues have offered up some financial assistance as well towards the project when we
That's
finally
important.
get
Thank you.
numbers.
I wanted to ask that. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Councilor Hagan?
Just a further clarification for Council Rist, it was brought, that's how it originally came for funding from CPA for that, but both organizations said they would do some type of financial and also in-kind funding of possibly, like in the case of Little League, maybe doing the dugouts and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's obviously a work, we need the design, but it would be a combined CPA.
Great.
Okay, are there any other members of the public who would like to step forward and address the council? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. I wanted to respond to Councilor Rist's comment or question. There likely is the availability of what are called park grants that are available for the construction of recreation programming, recreation fields, that sort of thing. We've used the predecessor to that grant program in the past in the park, and so there's a potential for that. I don't know, the details will have to be worked out once this scope is completed and there's a reasonably good design and cost estimates. Then I think the planner could be brought in to discuss whether or not there's a potential for a state grant, but there likely would be. Then what we've done in the past is we've asked the CPA for cost share, and then traditionally the private sector have added things to the base project, separate from what the project is bid, so that you end up with a public construction project that does the bulk of the work, that's funded jointly between a state grant and CPA money, and then a secondary follow-up project by the private sector that puts in an additional something to complete the project or to add a dimension of the project that wasn't in the original bid.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who would like to step forward and address the council on this issue? Please state your name and address for the record.
David Motter, 9 Kimberly Lane. I'm also a member of the Easthampton Little League Board of Directors. The request you have before you tonight for $27,000 for the design work, I think is a great use of CPA money. All you have to do is go up to Nonotuck Park any weekend, spring or fall, and there are hundreds, and I do mean hundreds, of children and families up there. You want to talk about a focal point for our community? Ask any parent that's been up there. When we bring in out-of-town teams, they are in awe at our facility. The view of the mountain, the fact that a city the size of Easthampton can have such amazing facilities just blows these other communities away. That's one of the proudest moments as a citizen and as an employee of the city, is when people are amazed at our facilities. Problem is, we're a victim of our own success. We don't have enough room for the children to play. The baseball, softball project not only is going to be used by Easthampton Little League, it'll be used by Easthampton High School softball teams. One of the fields will be designed to allow adult co-ed softball to locate down there, providing more fields for them. There's also Special Olympics that comes into the park and uses the fields. It'll give them more fields to use. And the soccer fields, you can go down there and see from pre-K to adult pickup games. And you go down there when the Soccer Association ran their 3-on-3 tournament this fall, you couldn't find a spot of open grass. So these fields are needed and the space is needed. And I think by investing this money in our children and our families in Easthampton, I think is the best thing we can do for our taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who would like to step forward and address the council on this issue? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Jennifer Carney, Palonis, 28 Fire Drive. Just to follow up what Mr. Motter had to say, I have some actual numbers for soccer this past fall. We had 651 kids playing. It was 194 games and 33 teams. And that doesn't even include practices, the adult pickup leagues, or anything of that sort. And that goes all the way from pre-K all the way up through the high school. And in the past 5 years, we've served 2,435.
I'll extend it one more time. Is there any other members of the public who would like to step forward and address the city council on this item?
Hi there. Patty Doherty, 82 Lovefield Street. I'm also the vice president for Easthampton Youth Soccer and the JV soccer coach for the girls soccer team here at the high school. And I just wanted to really, everything that Dave said was right on target, and obviously he's more well prepared than I am. But one thing I did want to make clear is that it's not only the youth soccer leagues and the little leagues, but that the high school utilizes these fields on a regular basis during their soccer season. So, you know, we're really, the numbers that Jennifer just shared with you are our youth soccer numbers, but there's a huge need for more fields for us, because between the two programs, we are literally, as soon as the high school players are off those fields, the youth soccer comes in, and the fields that we have right now are really being overutilized, and we are not able to, in Park and Rec, with the staffing they have, are not able to maintain those fields in a way that really we want to be playing on and that we can continue to be proud of in the way Dave was talking. So by expanding and hopefully putting in irrigation, we can create fields that will be able to be rested and then maintained properly over the years. And again, lastly, like what John mentioned, the extension of the soccer field, that last field was always in the plan to be built. And it's been years, since I've been on the board for 7 years now, this has been in the plan to finish this final field. And so, you know, it's my hope that we can get this done, you know, this year and through the end of, you know, part of next year as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's anybody else who'd like to speak, I'm going to ask them to kind of keep the comments short. We do have a couple other items I'd like to get to. Okay, seeing none, I would like to say, I'll allow you to come up with a motion first. Councilor Hagan, you have the floor.
I'd like to make the following motion. Make a motion that the City Council approve the following appropriation request in the amount of $27,000 to be appropriated from CPA open space funding, $27,000 to athletic field improvement expense, $27,000. The amount requested to be used for the following purpose: to fund the design of 3 new athletic fields in Nonotuck Park on behalf of the Easthampton Park and Recreation Department.
We have a motion on the table to recommend approval of a supplemental appropriation request of $27,000 to fund the design of 3 new athletic fields in Nonotuck Park. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Councilor Rist.
I just want to state my categorical support of this kind of a CPA fund, and I am absolutely thrilled that the law was changed to allow for existing recreational facilities to be renovated. With our budget constraints now, it is unlikely that capital improvement projects that involve the parks would be on the top priority. And since we have this fund and we need police cars and other capital improvement to be funded by our normal capital improvement process, this fund will go a long way towards helping the CPA fund us maintain these parks. And I'm thrilled. I grew up in Easthampton coaching, and Nonotuck Park is indeed a jewel. And I'm thrilled that they're finally going to get this renovation complete, and I'd like to see more of it being used, because there's no other way we can fund these renovations. We could use capital improvement money, but I think given that we have this funding, why not use it and allow our other funds to be used for other projects that can't be funded by the CPA. Thank you.
Any other further discussion? Councilor Hagan.
Just one quick comment. I failed to mention this did pass the Finance Subcommittee unanimously on a 2-0 vote.
Councilor.
Having had 2 children go through that program with the soccer in the fields, this is a great use of CPA funds for those fields. Having spent those years down there and watching them and everything else, it's It's a great use of money.
Okay. Anybody else? I'll speak to it this way. There's going to be a larger discussion once this goes through, where we're all going to get to voice our opinions on the overall project. There are some differences of opinions, I'm sure. This here, in case of finance, there was not. This is actually, to me, the correct way to go, because it gives us, for the most part, some hard numbers and a clear scope and an understanding of what we're actually voting on. And so I am speaking in favor of voting for this. Any further comment on this? Hearing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for your comments on this one. Councilor Hagan, you have the floor.
As long as we have Mr. Mason here, we'll move back to the top of the agenda, and I'll do a second reading on a supplemental appropriation dated January 30th, 2013. Request is hereby made for approval of the following appropriation. The amount requested, $17,100, to be appropriated from free cash to be appropriated to the Park Department capital equipment expense in the amount of $17,100. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to fund the acquisition of a commercial mowing machine. I'll let Mr. Mason really give the particulars on this. From the discussion in finance, it was a piece of equipment that he feels would expedite the amount of time needed by his personnel to mow all the different fields and grass that has to be mowed down in Nonotuck Park, and in the end would be a savings, long-term savings, at least to the city. But I'll let Mr. Mason feel
Mind
himself.
step forward, please? I will ask you just to state your name. You don't have to do your address.
John Mason. Yeah, once again, Councilor Hagan did a nice job explaining the plan. Our current mower, we have two mowers. We have a Jacobson that does a really nice job, and then the one we're looking to replace is for lack of a better term, a homeowner's tractor, a 42-inch deck that can handle a larger piece of land for home, but to have the daily grind of using it at the park is a lot to ask of that machine. And as we move forward, and we're always looking to expand our facilities, as an earlier proposal suggests, we have to start thinking long-term about our equipment and to handle those needs. Even the current facility that we have, having that mower is not ideal at all. So moving up to a commercial grade, 60-inch deck, zero-turn, diesel power with it'll have a dump availability right from the seat, so the guys can mow, dump. They're not jumping out, they're not raking, they're not doing those kind of things. The zero-turn, we have one for the cemetery. It's increased productivity. It's amazing how quick they cut and how efficient it's made, the cemetery staff. So we think adding this piece of equipment will add efficiency, which is what we're always looking for. If we can work more efficiently, we can get other things done in the park. So that's where we stand on that. Any questions regarding the mower?
Any of the councils have any questions for Mr. Mason? No. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will, before we begin and allow motion here, I will make a note that we also did discuss that finance, security of the new equipment, big piece of equipment. We want to make sure we get to keep it for the full length of time we can, and Mr. Mason provided us a satisfactory explanation for that. That said, is there any further discussion here?
Just that this also passed 2-0 unanimously in front of the subcommittee.
I turn it over to you then for...
I'll make the following motion. I request that the City Council approve the following supplemental appropriation. The amount requested, $17,100, to be appropriated from free cash in the amount of $17,100 and appropriated to Park Department capital equipment expense in the amount of $17,100. The amount request will be used for the following purpose: to fund the acquisition of a commercial mowing machine. And my one question is, at one point we only wanted 17,000. Is it still 17,100? This was the only one that was submitted.
That's my mistake.
Oh, okay.
It's correct in the
It was on
list.
the agenda. I didn't know if somebody had submitted.
No, no.
Is it 17-1 or something?
So it is in the amount of 17,100. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to recommend a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $17,100 to fund the acquisition of a commercial mowing machine. Is there any further discussion on this motion? No. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. Councilor Hagan, you still have the floor.
Final public hearing on a supplemental appropriation. I'll do a second reading dated January 9th, 2013. Request is hereby made for approval of the following appropriation. The amount requested, $100,000 to be appropriated from free cash, and that amount, $100,000, to be appropriated to the following: police education incentive, $65,000, police sick leave buyback, $30,000, and police uniform expense, $5,000. This was the amount requested to be used for the following purpose: to fund an expected shortfall in the police department. I don't believe Chief McMahon was able to make it tonight. I'm sure the mayor can speak. This is, a lot of this revolves around some officers that have left and new officers coming on, and the need to upgrade some of their equipment. And also, there's provisions within the contracts that have to be funded to buy back sick leave when they do leave. But I'll let the mayor expand upon this.
Mayor Towson.
Thank you. Councilor Hagan has it right on, and I'll try to answer any questions you might have, but it is related to the turnover, the injury on duty activity that you're aware of. As you can see, it's the bulk of it is to pay for benefits that are due employees on the way out. The request initially was a little bit higher, but I looked at the budget and talked to the chief, and we brought it down slightly, but the $100,000 is needed.
Okay. Any questions for the mayor on this? I will say that the chief did provide a pretty detailed explanation. Thank you, Mike. Is there any other members of the public who would like to step forward and address this issue? Please state your name and address for the council, please. Seeing none, Councilor Hagan, you have the floor.
Okay, I'll make the following motion. I'd like to make the motion that the city council approve the following supplemental appropriation. The amount requested, $100,000, to be appropriated from free cash, $100,000 to be appropriated to police education incentive, $65,000, police sick leave buyback, $30,000, and police uniform expense, $5,000. The amount requested used for the following purpose: to fund an expected shortfall in the police department budget.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Here we have a motion on the table to recommend approval of supplemental appropriation of $100,000 to fund an expected shortfall in the police department budget, as expressed tonight. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion.
Or whatever.
Been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? That motion passes. We head down to committee reports. Councilor Rist, you have the floor first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a report this evening. First, on the citizen request for Mount Tom Coal Plant resolution. As you recall, we received a request to support action by the local Sierra Club and Ms. Kim Finch, who gave it to us, to support action requesting the governor deal with the fact that the Mount Tom plant had a serious problem with unacceptable levels of sulfur dioxide, and then weren't operating their scrubbers, etc. In the meantime, we did contact Senator Knappich, mainly because he is chairing a committee that deals with plant revitalization and decommissioning of all coal plants. That would mean decommissioning them or changing them over to a different fuel. You have on the desk, I had the clerk give you two emails. One which we received today from Mr. Drew Gardner, who is the local Sierra Club head, I guess he is. In those emails, you will see that first, Senator Knappich's office indicated that Mount Tom is complying with DEP regulations as of today, and that before issuing a new permit, Mount Tom must, quote, demonstrate that the facility does not cause or contribute to a violation of the new 1-hour sulfur dioxide national ambient air quality standard, which would be in place before they could operate their plant, or they're supposed to have the permit in place. Today, we received an email which indicates that the plant is requesting to be listed as delisted from operation by 2016 or 17. And according to Mr. Gardner in his letter, he indicates that that is usually an indicator that they are going to probably decommission the plant and close it. All of which being said, the committee discussed all this and voted 3-0 to request that the council remove this item from its agenda without prejudice, primarily because, one, we would like the city of Holyoke to take the first action, if any action is required in this regard, because the project, the Mount Tom plan exists on their property. Secondly, there are or will soon be permitted by DEP. They must meet the latest stringent standards, so that DEP action is imminent, and Mr. Gardner said they are very happy with the DEP's actions to this point. And finally, given what we got today, also because of what Senator Knapik's office said to us, they are delisting the plant. We feel it would be unnecessary to move with the resolution. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to move this.
Any questions? Hearing none, Council Riss.
I'll move that the council please remove from the Rules Committee's agenda the Mount Tom coal plant resolution without prejudice.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to recommend removal of this item from the Rules and Government Relations Committee without prejudice. Any further discussion on the motion? I will just add one comment. When they delist, it's an indicator that they're headed towards a direction, but it's not a definitive definition that they are going to do that. I don't want to get too speculative at this point. That said, is there any further discussion on this? No. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those objecting? None. Abstentions? None. Motion passes. Council Riss.
Secondly, the Rules Committee will meet on Tuesday, the 12th at 5:30 in a room to be designated, and we'll put that on the agenda for councilors to see, to discuss the rule request from Councilor McCoy, which will be moved at in business.
Thank you.
That is all.
Finance, Councilor Hagan.
Finance, first I'll announce our next meeting. Our next meeting will be March 13th, a week from tonight, room 1 at 6 p.m. As you can see, Finance has quite a full agenda of items, but in the spirit of brevity, I'd like to set some public hearings. The first public hearing I'd like to set is on the first item, which is an interdepartmental transfer of $6,000 to pay for the cost of the April 30th, 2013 special election primary. And I'd like to set this, request that we set this public hearing for April 17th. There is some indications by the city clerk that there may be state funding that's going to cover this, and if that does come through, we might not have to make the appropriation, so therefore we'll set the public hearing for, that's the second meeting in April 17th. So I'll do that in the form of motion that we set a public hearing on the $6,000 to pay for the cost of the April 30th, 2013 special election for April 17th, 2013 at 6 p.m. in these chambers.
Second.
We have a motion on the table to set,
6:15.
set a public hearing at 6:15 in these chambers for April 17, 2013 for the interdepartmental transfer of $6,000 to pay for the special state primary. Is there any further discussion on this motion? No. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. Councilor Hagan, still on the floor.
I would also like to set 4 additional public hearings, and I will, all for the same date, and I will do this in the form of one motion if I could. I'd like to set the public hearing on the matter of $20,000 for installation of a new boiler at the Emily Williston Library. a public hearing for the $5,000 for the cost of high-density shelving at the municipal building, a public hearing for the $27,000 to upgrade the city computer system, and a public hearing to purchase 2 marked police vehicles for in the amount of $78,000. All 4 of those public hearings would be set for March 20th, 2013 at 6:15 PM in these chambers.
Second.
We have a motion on the table to recommend setting a public hearing at 6:15 in these chambers for the aforementioned 4 supplemental appropriations for April 17, 2013. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. Councilor Hagan?
The following items, which would be starting with the $27,000 to upgrade the, after the $27,000 to upgrade the computer system in the police vehicle, we start with a $15,000 item that moves down to the $70,000. All of those are the Department of Public Works items, and the director is going to be at our Finance Committee meeting next Wednesday, and we hope to take up as many of those items at that time as we can. That's my report tonight, although there will be a couple of new business items when we get there.
Okay. Councilor McCoy, Public Safety?
Thank you, Mr. President. No, old business pending. I'll move something for new business, I guess, a little later, but thank you.
You want to move it now during your
Sure,
report?
that's right here, that'd be terrific.
We had an item that came to us tonight that you don't see on your agenda. It was from Councilor McCoy. I'm going to ask him to move this to Public Safety for consideration at this time.
So we got a letter from our Chief of Police requesting us to consider a stop sign at the intersection of Kingsbury Way and Strong Street. There have been some information that there have been accidents in that area, and that a stop sign would be required in that intersection. So I'd like to make a motion to send this request for a stop sign at the intersection of Kingsbury Way and Strong Street to Public Safety.
Second?
We have a motion on the table to recommend this request for a stop sign at Kingsbury Way and Strong Street be sent to Public Safety for consideration and review. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. Still have the floor.
That concludes, although,
Wait.
yeah.
It concludes, although?
I was going to say, I don't believe Councilor Winnie is here if you wanted me to take appointments. So
Yes, please.
Okay. So I will take on the appointments, and we have no report, so that concludes her appointments.
Thank you very much. Councilor Ziegler? Pronounce it for me correctly.
Ziegler.
Ziegler.
We have no,
I apologize for the ordinance, please.
thank you. We have no report this evening, Mr. President,
I
thank you.
do have one comment. There is one item pending before ordinance. Given the age of this item, I personally would like an update, see where it's going or what the intent is. I'm willing to also attend the meeting if need be. Pass that
Right.
word along to the members. Property, Councilor Psychowski is not here. Councilor
It's me.
Ogilvitz, there's one item we need to move to property.
I guess we'll move to the property committee on, what's it, the 20th?
Already?
We already did that.
We already moved that?
We did?
Okay, we already moved it, so we're good to go. So in that case, besides that item, there's no report.
No report.
That said, new business. Council McCoy? Or Councilor Riss, why don't you move this
I'll
one?
just move the council rule request amendment from Councilor McCoy to Rules Committee for review.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to move a request to amend council rules of public speak time to Rules Committee for consideration and review. Any further discussion on this motion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? None? Councilor Rist, I guess that does it on that one.
Yep.
Councilor Hagan, you have the floor.
First item, I'll do a first reading on an interdepartmental transfer. Amount requested for approval following appropriation, amount requested $20,000 to be transferred from the reserve fund. In that amount, $20,000 to be transferred to the Veterans Cash Benefits, $20,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to fund an expected shortfall in the funds to pay veterans' benefits. I'd make this in the form of a motion that this item be moved to the Finance Committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion before us to send to Finance Committee the request for an interdepartmental transfer of $20,000 to fund an expected shortfall in funds to pay veteran benefits. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? That motion passes. Counselor Hagan?
The other item of new business, and I'll do a first reading on a supplemental appropriation request. The request is hereby made for approval of the following appropriation. The amount requested, $25,000 to be appropriated from free cash, $25,000, and appropriated to 32B Insurance Retired School, $8,000, 32B Insurance Active City, $7,000, and 32B Insurance Retired City, $10,000. The amount requested be used for the following purpose: to fund a projected shortfall in the employee insurance budget. I make, in the form of a motion, that this supplemental appropriation be sent to finance for consideration.
Second. We have a motion on the table to recommend a supplemental appropriation request of $25,000 to fund a projected shortfall in the employee insurance budget be sent to finance for review and consideration. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. That said, I think that concludes, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There is a motion to adjourn. Are there any further items that need to come up? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
You don't have to.